How are you finding London? Is it your first visit to
Yes,
London?
it's my first visit. Absolutely loving it. I've had clear skies and
Yeah.
everyone's telling me it's not raining yet. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's been beautiful.
London can be deceptive, right? Especially British summers. They always say, you find something always new. It's amazing. Welcome to London, by the way. I'm super excited. As I was telling at the beginning of the conversation, that I love the stuff which goes with children, and I've seen your amount of work. I mean, I've seen your TEDx speeches. I've seen your other kind of stuff as well. You've done extensive amount of work. Do you want to quickly start with your introduction so my audience know who you are, and then we will get into details.
Yep, of course, I'm Dr. Malhar. I primarily work in the field of diabetes and obesity. We run a sort of global setup now from Pune, India. And it's just been an overall healthcare journey. I did my master's from New Zealand in pediatric obesity is my area of specialization, even psychology.
Yeah.
So all of it was all geared initially towards children, but then we started to broaden it towards families. So, children, of course, dependent on the family setup. So I realized that just working with children in isolation wasn't working.
Yeah.
So after that, I kind of broadened to family setup. So last 10 years, all we've been doing is reversing diabetes and preventing diabetes and obesity as a mission. So it's been
amazing. So you started working with children as a topic, right? For you. Yeah. So you said in New Zealand. I mean, was there a reason why you chose New Zealand to do your medicine?
New Zealand had the highest medals per million. Okay. When I went there, I found that every school there was producing Olympians. So I went on to study how they're doing that, because in India, of course, medals per billion now is tougher. And I realized that what they do is very different. So, and Kiwis are very... they're like Aussies. That culture is very sporty. So I wanted to bring that culture, to other parts of the world. So
sounds very interesting. So what caught my attention is a couple of things that you said in your TEDx, right? One of the things were like people talk about obesity as an item, or diabetes and all. We used to talk about, you were giving this analysis of 1960s. People used to have obesity at the age of 70s, 60s, somewhere around that. And come 1970s, it reduced to 50 years of age. Then you gave that analogy, right? And now I'm really disheartened seeing some of the kids, right? 5-year-old, 6-year-old having issues with diabetes, having issues with obesity. So why don't we quickly start with that? Like, what is the biggest reason for, especially, when we talk about obesity, we talk about food, your lifestyle and all that stuff, right? And that, yes, you're right, to adults, grown-ups, they have to do certain changes to their lifestyle to bring it back. But when you talk about 5-year-old, what he or she could have done? So what's your view on that?
The onset of obesity, of course, has become earlier. Of course, now we are seeing 25-year-olds having almost 25% increase suddenly in the last 10 years. And it's largely affluence would be one of the major categories. So in urban cities, it's more as opposed to rural, where there's still more of a labor economy. We're more of an intellectual economy now. A lot of IT and tech, and so that the baseline activity levels have dropped, of course. And again, food has become a convenience thing. So again, I always believe that we are always a reflection of socio-economic factors. If you're going to work, feed 7 billion with reducing arable land, there's going to be more food processing, and we have to turnaround times have to increase of crops. So the same nutrition value that was there pound for pound is going to decrease. But we are still used to a certain volume of food. So, of course, the calorie intake has increased, but the nutrition has decreased. So, we're just eating more than we used to. Okay. And again, the number of children overall in per family, because of the cost, is becoming lesser. So, the spread of calorie intake across 4 or 5 children, which was earlier, is now all given to one child. So, it's just a bunch of factors. I wouldn't blame anyone. We're just seeing a very fast gestation. What should have taken decades to set in, diabetes, obesity, 25 year gestation diseases, they're starting to set in, in a decade or two, which is just what it is, again. And I think families will have to take cognizance of this shift. It has nothing to do with personality or just pure. A 5-year-old doesn't know what depression is.
Yeah, exactly.
We can't just turn around and say, oh, the kid's depressed, or run some kind of psycho tests on the kid. It's more to do with the environment. So the grandparent got it at 60, the parent at 40, the kids below 20. So it's just what it is. We have to acknowledge the acceleration and take steps. We don't have to keep looking for individual causes.
Yeah. But does it have anything to do with the global ways of living? Like we talk about in the Paris summit, right? They talked about COP 26, 27, like whatever it is, right? I mean, eventually, the way you love your environment, the way you live, and the food intake that you're taking, is that all drives into this? Do you agree on that, or is it like broadly individual, specific, family specific thing?
I think it finally comes down to you undergoing a learning curve. It's like making a living.
Okay.
You know, you're going to finally have to get out there and create value and make a living. Similarly, with the food, you have to get nutrition focused. So the earlier a child learns to separate food from nutrition, which is, okay, that's where my nutrition's coming from. And this is where indulgence is. Like, we all know high sugar, high carb, processed carbs, refined, stuff like that. We know everything. But the question is, if a child doesn't have options,
Yeah.
it's going to... But then again, it's an environmental thing. If all the families are doing is buying processed food, the kids' intake starts increasing. So I read a scary statistic which showed that I think per capita sugar consumption is now close to 40 grams per child per day, which is incredible. At our time it was 5 to 10 grams. So these are real world statistics, and the per capita calorie intake. Again, I would love to differentiate between developed countries and sort of developing countries. In a developed country, you will see more obesity in the poor sections of society. Whereas in underdeveloping, you will see more obesity because the convenience increases, so people tend to hire other people to do their work.
Yeah.
Whereas here, the hobbies increase. Like I see UK, it's fantastic, the kind of, fitness that one sect of the population has.
Correct.
And there's a complete other sect where it's not there. So I think we're going to polarize the world into two. When we say 50% overweight obesity, that's half who's very active and very half, and the other half who's not.
Yeah.
So it's again like the haves and have-nots.
That's a very interesting stat, because that's a very good segue to my next question as well. Because I was reading through when I was researching about your profile and all, then I thought, you spend a lot of time in India, but the obesity capital is United States, for example, right?
Per capita, yes.
Yeah, per capita. You rightly mentioned about haves and have-nots, or the developed economies and all. US is the most prominent developed economy, but you still see diabetes and obesity raising a lot. So what do you think the major, is it again, I'll come back to the same question. There are two elements of obesity or diabetes, right? One is food intake.
Yeah.
Two is they talk about genetic
of course.
stuff as well. And there's another element of, your body exercise and all that stuff, right? How do you want to differentiate with these three? Like, what are the different categories or major parameters you want to say? Like, food intake is, I don't know whether you have to prioritize and say that's the biggest or this is small. Like, how do you categorize it?
Yeah, again, when you take something like twins that have been raised in separate families, adopted separately, you will see that environment does play a factor, but they still develop the same kind of weight gain.
Yeah.
So what happens is their shape may be different based on the activities they pursue in the different families, but studies have shown that at the end of the day, the weight does come.
Okay.
So genetics plays a huge role. You can't outrun your genetics. You can only suppress it temporarily by sort of going on diets, but weight gain is inevitable. What I personally believe is fat gain is optional.
Okay.
So you will gain weight one way or the other. So you take any society, initially we see menopausal women as the first segment that gains weight. After that, you tend to see children starting to gain. And then you see the poorer sections. When you see the poor sections being the largest sector, you know that an entire society has started to rise. Because again, I come back to how do you feed 1 billion people? You have to fry something. You have to put it in, and that's how you preserve it as well.
Yeah.
And you sell it in packets with processing. There's no other way. How do you get 2,000 calories to 30 million, 40 million people? So preservation is the future. We're just going to have to find ways because you can't have fresh food, cold chains running at that depth. So again, these are just real world problems of feeding 7 billion, 8 billion people. So like I said, end of the day, activity is in your control. If the families prioritize activity, there's going to be some future for the kids. Otherwise, as I saw in the last endocrinology conference, a scary stat where one of them, the senior endocrinologist, said, we are the first generation, the 80s and 90s parents, who are actually going to outlive our children. So we have had active childhoods, and with medicine-adjusted living.
That's painful.
Yeah, we are actually going to live to 80, 90 with modern medicine and with vaccinations and everything. But given the next generation's early onset of chronic diseases, they may not pull off 60. So these are real world statistics, and again, it's what it is, I think every family has to just step up and Understand, yeah, we can keep talking about genetics, 60%, 50%, but 40, 50% still environmental. And yes, body types. You've inherited a larger body type. You do.
Yeah.
But can you keep the look at Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
A large 125, 30 kgs, but at what fat percent?
Yeah.
10,
Yeah.
15? So you can be athletic
Yeah.
irrespective of the weight.